G'day, welcome back to another video. If you're new here, welcome. So in this video, we're going to be building this. The Kyosho Turbo Optima. Beautiful. I'm only going to build the chassis. In the next video, I'll paint the body and things like that, and the driver. One other thing I want to show you is, I'll get that out of the way for a minute. Got this under tray from Revive RC. So yeah, Turbo Optimas don't have an under tray, so he's gone and made one. And as you can see, it's got little recesses there for your Velcro. So basically, when you put the body on, it doesn't bulge out. Very nice. Anyway, I'll put that on in the next video. I won't paint it. I'm going to leave it clear so you can see all the nice gold underneath. And that'll be fantastic. Anyway, we'll get into it. Alrighty, so we're all ready to go. Got the tools out there, or most of them. Got all the parts laid out. Put the parts into their respective tubs. And the first thing we do, start on the diffs. So I've already started here, and I've got half the front and half of the rear diff. And I've already put one of the out drives in the front diff. So we'll have a look at the rear one now. Now putting the pin in the out drive is a bit of a pain, so I'll show you how I do it. So you bang a bit of grease on the shaft there, put your O-ring on. And you can stick the out drive into the gear, into the side there. Beautiful. And a little bit of grease on the inside. Just around the shaft there. And then just whack your shim inside. And I just poke it down with a pair of pointy pliers, make life a bit easier. The pin's a bit of a pain. I kind of use the finger underneath to push the shaft in as far as I can to take up any slack on the O-ring. So it exposes the hole a little bit easier, makes the pin a bit easier to slip in. You can also put it down on the bench with the out drive on the bench, push the gear down, make that extra space to put the pin in. So from there you just fill them up with grease. You can use silicone oil in these because they do have a gasket, so you can fill them up with oil if you like. And then we just go and bang the bevel gears in. Then you can put the ring on, and then the gasket. And I smear a bit of grease around the gasket, helps it seal. Then we can put the other side of the diff on there, push them together, and bang the screws in. So that's our front diff done. Looking very good. Turns over nicely, very good. So now for the rear one. And that goes together exactly the same way. So that's our rear diff finished. Turns over nicely as well. So now on to step 3 and 4, we're putting the rear gearbox together. Got the belt in there. And you got the idler gear and stuff. Beautiful. You might notice there that I missed the gear for the belt, but I'll put it in again later. So that's the rear gearbox together. Got the front gearbox together. And we've got our first piece of gold on there. Beautiful. So after that, put the top and the bottom belt rails on. So then it's time to work on some more pretty gold bits. We got the motor guard there, started assembling that, and the motor plate. Very nice. And as you can see here, most of the pretty gold bits are all fitted up now, looking good. I'm not going to say it looks like a buggy yet, but it is looking pretty. So moving on, we go to step 9. Put the sway bar on in the front underguard, and a chassis brace for the center of the chassis. And there it is. That can be a bit hard to put on. You've got to kind of clip it down over the belt guide, but not too bad. And we've got the servo saver in there, looking good. And you can see the nice front sway bar there. So on to step 12 and 13. We start putting the slipper clutch in, and there he is, all assembled. And looking down the front, we've got the side plates and things on there. Got the mounts for the upper arms, or upper linkages. It's coming along now. Now it's time to get onto some linkages, and we can fit the front and rear shock towers. So I've done a couple of linkages there. And yeah, I'll show you something with this other one. Save your fingers a little bit. A lot of people probably know, but you know, this is kind of how I do it. Just screw the ends on a few turns just to get them started. Then grab a couple of screwdrivers, just little ones like that, and stick one in each hole and start turning. Of course, this really only works if the right hand thread on both sides. a lot of turnbuckles, you know, they got different threads on each side, so that's not going to work. You got to hold it in the middle. Then when you get close, you can just, you know, do them up by hand. So then you can just measure it, do it up a little bit, measure it, do it up a little bit, keep going until you got it right. Now it's time to put the balls into the ball ends. And I'll just kind of sit them there and get the pointy pliers and line up the ball with the flat area inside the pliers, not the serrated part. So then you don't mince up your ball ends. Snap it in and you're good to go. So there's our rear shock tower. Got the shock mount screws on there and the upper linkages and the front upper linkages and the mounts for the front shocks. Now moving on to step 16 and 17. You get to put the all the arms on, the lower suspension arms. So they're all done. Looking good. And now we can get onto the hub carriers in step 17. So grab an axle, whack a bearing on it, stick it through the hub, whack another bearing on. Then grab your wheel hex, and you just want to make sure the raised flat area is facing the hub. Then just put your screw in. Too easy. Nip it up. It's all turning nicely. Got to be happy with that. And then just bang your ball in for your tie rod in. Nut on the bottom. Tighten him up. And that's it. The hub's done. Now we can move on to the carrier. So we put the ball in there for the shock mount. Now this little ball here, you don't want the thread sticking out any more than 1/2 mil. They want 1/2 mil, so that's what they got. Now when putting these little collars in, you're probably better off to leave those screws out, not do it the way I did. Just put the collars in and then put the hub in, and off you go. And don't forget to use thread lock wherever it's needed. It's always indicated in the manual if you need it. It's usually a good idea to use some on metal to metal parts. So this is why I say probably better to leave those screws out till you need them, because you kind of need 3 hands. You got to hold the screws, the hub, the carrier all at once. Much easier just to put the collars or sleeves in, whatever you want to call them, first, and then put the hub in, and then one screw at a time. And there's our finished front hub. So the next one's exactly the same, only backwards of course, because it goes on the other side. Anyway, moving on to step 18, we get to put the front hubs on, and step 19 we get to put the tie rods on. So there we go, the front end's almost complete, just needs shocks really. Looking good. So now we've got the sway bar linkages on the front there, fantastic. And same on the rear sway bars all hooked up, and we've got the rear hubs on, axles in, beautiful. Starting to look like a real buggy now. So after that it was time to fit the radio plate. There it is, looking good. I think it's time we just take a minute and appreciate all that pretty gold. Looking very nice, I think. Very happy with it so far. Now speaking of gold, it's time to build some very pretty gold shocks. Now these are quite nice shocks, but the worst part is probably these seals that go in the bottom. As you can see, they have these 4 little raised areas on the inside of the seal. Now those line up with 4 little flat areas on the bottom of the shock, right there. So you got to line those up, best you can anyway. Yeah, try to get them lined up and then just sort of pull it over evenly is the best bet. I was struggling here with the camera in the way. And it's probably good to have fingernails too. But once you get it started, they're not too bad. You can just pull them down like that pretty quickly. Just try to pull them down evenly. You really don't want to break one. And there we go. So do that 4 times and you're on your way. And there we go. They're all built up, looking good. I like the original gold Kyosho shocks. They are very pretty, but you know, these are just as pretty, I think. And they work well too. So there you go. They're all fitted up on the car. Looking very sweet. It's looking real nice now, I think. Now in step 32, it's time to fit the front bumper. And you got the choice of either the short bumper or the long one. I went for the long one just because that's how it looks on the box. And then it's time to get onto the electronics. So I've got the Savox 1251 MG Metal Gear Servo. Got a Futaba R202 GF receiver. A very nice Kyosho Le Mans 240S brushless motor, 15.5 turn. And a nice Kyosho Le Mans 240S ESC. Now if you saw my last video, I did an unboxing on them, so you can check that out. I'll leave a link up the top. Now this is the part of the build where things get interesting. As you can see, I've got the antenna going underneath the receiver there because I wanted it to come out this side over here. But I still wanted the receiver facing forward. So I cut a couple of strips of double-sided tape, made it double height so the antenna can just sit down the middle there. But I ended up scrapping that plan. More on that later. Anyway, moving on, we've got the servo all set up in his mount there, looking good. Got the servo horn on. Now you don't need a low profile servo like I used. The standard one will just stick out the back a little bit more. It'll be fine. So there's our receiver that I'll end up moving. And our servo's all screwed in. Got the linkage on for the servo saver. All good. Now it's time to get onto the motor. And there it is. Got the spur gear and stuff in there. Got him all greased up, looking good. And got the gear cover on. I'll take that off later anyway, because I need to move the motor a bit to solder the wires on. Now one thing I didn't want to do was use this double-sided tape on the ESC. I wanted to screw it in using these mount holes on the back here. So what did I do? I marked it out with a bit of tape and, you know, marked where the edge of the ESC will go, and drilled a couple of 3mm holes in the radio plate. Now, my countersinks were far too big. I didn't have any the right size. So I just used, ran a 3mm drill through the hole there, and then get a drill much bigger. In this case it's 9mm. And just by hand, just, you know, turn the drill, and you don't want to go right through, of course, then you'll have a 9mm hole, but yeah, just hollow it out. Now because the ESC needs to kind of straddle the belt guide, you need some spacers. And after some measuring, I found these little spacers on the tree for the shock parts. So there we go, with a couple of 10mm countersunk hex screws, job's done. And you can see we've got a gap under there, beautiful. So it's not pulled up tight against the belt guide or anything like that. And there's enough room over the top where we can hide wires too. Now since I forgot to put the sensor wire in first time round, I had to take the ESC out and fit a sensor wire. Anyway, normally the motor wires come out the side of the chassis and around the top of the radio plate and then through the rear shock tower. I thought they looked a bit untidy, so I've drilled 3 5mm holes there for the motor wires, and a bigger hole I made, I don't know what size it is, for the sensor cable, and also a little 2mm hole for the antenna wire. So now all the wires run through the chassis instead of around it. I think it's looking pretty good. So after that I went and soldered the motor wires on, and there we go. Looking pretty smooth, I think. And I also shortened the switch wire too, so there wasn't a whole bunch of wire in there, and I shortened the wire for the battery as well. So there we go, that's the wiring all done. Now you might be wondering if the driver figure actually fits. Yes it does. Naturally I had to cut a hole in the back of it, and it is very tight. It's resting against the receiver wires there, but it's all sitting flush, looking good. But I did end up rotating the receiver a little bit just because those wires were hitting the driver. Now you might have noticed I've got the wheels and tyres on, so it's pretty simple. They got foams in them, fit the foams, fit the tyres, and then glue them on. So I'll have a bit of a look around. I think it's looking pretty sexual. Loving the gold. All looking very neat and clean. I'm happy with it. And of course we got that beautiful 240S in the back there. Magnificent. Should go sick too. And there it is. There's our chassis all completed. I've gone and put a battery in it. So we'll see if it actually works. Alrighty, so we've got the battery in now. All looking good. Fits in, no problem at all. So we'll see if it works. Well, I actually know it worked. I had to set up the ESC. And it's alive. Steering's all set up nicely. So there we go. We've got forward, brake, and reverse. So I can officially say it's alive. Almost ready to rock and roll. These cables here, I might get a cable tie, run it, you know, kind of across to there just to keep them all in one place, keep it neat. But with the under tray on it anyway, it'll go around all that, so it's all good. Anyway, that's about it for this video. I think it turned out pretty good. Loving the gold. Magnificent. Yeah, kind of a shame to drive it, but I'll get there, get it out there for a rip. And loving the 240 motor, beautiful. And the ESC in there, magnificent. Anyway, that's it for this video. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumb up. If you're new here, subscribe, that'd be great. And catch you next time.